But yeah, so we keep
Yeah, we're all over the place right now.
we can't get away from maybe.
But so
The Earth is round. We landed on the moon.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Kayura and Matt podcast, where we are documenting our journey of my fiance trying to turn me into a gamer. For those new here, I'm Kayura, the newbie to the gaming multiverse.
And I am Malganis, the overseasoned, overcooked veteran.
Okay. So, life has been crazy, as always.
I'm slowly losing my mind.
Yeah, I feel like this week was off to a decent start, and then we had to take one of our kittens to the vet.
Yeah,
She has pink eye, is essentially so.
She has feline pink eye, essentially, is what she has.
Which we were prepared for it to be a lot worse. And
oh my god, yeah. When we walked out and it was only $170, I was like, oh.
Yeah, after what we went through with our previous cat, it was like, we're not ready.
Yeah, it was like, hey, just put this little ointment in her eyes. She's going to be uncomfortable with it, but it's going to make her feel better. I was just like, oh my god, thank you. I was almost in tears. I was like, thank you so much.
Yeah, and after the previous, with Mindy, it was a $1,800 vet bill.
Just for her, not including the dog.
Yeah. So it was a little bit of a relief. And the fact that, of course, with Mindy, we're like, oh, she has a little cold. And then it was worst case scenario. So here we're going into oh my God, she has a tumor on her eye where the eye is going to have to be removed.
Yeah, I was like, the only thing that would have been funny in that situation is I could have done nothing but make Metal Gear Solid references, and she would have been punished wasabi or venom wasabi the entire time from Metal Gear Solid: The Phantom Pain. I would have bought her an eye patch and got her a little red sleeve to put on.
Let's be honest, Sriracha would not have let her keep the eye patch on.
No, she'd have been like, what is wrong with you? Yeah, the War Thunder grind is slowly but surely sucking my soul away, but it has been fun. I've had some fun moments. And then a dear friend of mine, when playing Helldivers with him, continues to drop the entire U.S. defense budget on $3. Every single time he sees bugs, he's like, did somebody say orbital bombardment? So yeah, that's been fun playing. Having full 4 stacks for Helldivers has been a lot of fun. And then you don't... This kind of sucks. So you understand the concept of microtransactions. We've talked about that, yes. Right? So there's a new game that came out called Dragon's Dogma 2 that a lot of people were excited for, that apparently has the dumbest microtransactions ever made. And then there was apparently an Apex Legends tournament hack that happened that was none of the players in the game actually participated in. It was an outside attacker.
Were they trying to boost for their favorite player, or just trying to mess with it? No,
they were just trying to exploit a vulnerability just for the lulz, I guess. Which is interesting, but I guess that's why a lot of hackers do what they do. But sorry, go ahead.
I'm not really surprised about that. Hacking is becoming a very big thing.
I mean, it's been a big thing, but it seems now...
just for the fun of it to, I can do this, so, there's no gain, there's no benefit, it's just, I can do this, so I'm going to.
Right, yeah, I definitely get that. But before we jump into the meat of today's episode, if you guys are enjoying the content, please hit that like and subscribe button, leave us a comment about your favorite games, and tell us what you would like us to try, and we'll try some new stuff out. Kira's kind of stuck on War Thunder right now, so we're going to keep doing that.
I like flying planes.
She likes, she doesn't like whirly birds, but she likes vroom vrooms, so.
Yes, airplanes go vroom vroom through the sky, as one of my aerospace professors taught us in class one day.
If it does this, it's a missile. If it does this, it's a rocket ship. If it does this, you're having a bad day.
So no, actually, speaking of hacking, I just kind of have an interesting thought, because you have to think about essentially hackers. You're looking at computer scientists, people that are considered engineers, generally people who like to learn, and with how current technology is evolving to be in programming, you're constantly having to learn and evolve. I'm wondering if part of the hacking is just for like the fun of it and like learning something new.
It could be. They haven't caught this guy yet, from what I understand, but the Art Software, who's a game developer, but he's spent 20 years being an offensive security specialist. From the videos he's made, that's what I've gleaned from him. Was kind of helping out and figuring it out. Um, but this seems to be that the hacker was trying to bring light to a vulnerability or an exploit that was open. So
I can see that.
that is a way to do it. I don't think that should be the way to do it.
Well, and I'm sorry, this is coming fresh off of my conference where we talked a lot about like data and data governance and like advancements with data. And you have to think about like everything you use online is storing some kind of data about you, even if it's just your email address. They're storing that information. And there's a lot of debate going on right now within the world of data on like the security measures that should be taken depending on what the data is and all this other stuff. And a lot of times like do you know the most common lie in the entire world?
No.
I have read and agreed to these terms and conditions.
Oh yeah, E. Lewis. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, even though those terms and conditions like spell out like, hey, this is how we're doing all this stuff, no one reads it. And no one really knows what is being done with their data that they're putting out there. And so I do feel like it's a way of like, because the companies are just like, well, it's in our terms and conditions. These people said they read it and agreed to it, so we're in the clear to be selling this off.
I mean, that is the greatest crime of the millennial generation, is they sold the entire world's privacy to private corporations to do with as they please.
And so I wonder if it's a way of like bringing to light some of what's going on there and like being like, hey, like you need to be more cautious of this, or like, hey, like they have all this data but their security measures are not what it should be, or like, because most of us don't know what their security measures are. We don't read through it. We don't know what they're doing with it. We don't know if they're selling it or not. I mean, there's even, and I want to say I'm speaking 100% from what I have seen in YouTube videos and heard. I have not done a whole lot of research into this, so I could be very wrong in saying this, but a lot of people started doing YouTube videos on like BetterHelp, and that's falling under therapy, which should fall under HIPAA, but supposedly, and again, I'm repeating what other people have said, supposedly like they have it in their terms and conditions that like they basically in a nutshell like don't follow HIPAA, and they can, there's certain parts of the information that they will sell off. So there was like speculation that they're selling off like appointment times that people are on to like, and again very general here, but like places like Facebook and stuff, which means like, you request off of work and you're very general about why you're requesting off of work, but if the data gets out there, your employer could be like, oh, this person had a therapy appointment at this time when they requested off of work.
So I come from a different land of a lot of like OSINT, intelligence gathering, like human intelligence gathering, things like that. Like a good example that I really like, one that Pirate Software uses, is he basically goes through the job application process to a corporate entity, and he figures out who like one of the HR reps are, reaches out to him and says, hey, I'm thinking about applying to your company, and I'm going to have to move to come work for you guys. What's some good places to eat? Well, HR person goes, oh yeah, well, we like to eat here. That's a good place around here that a lot of us eat, that's close to the office, and this, that, and the other. And now, boom, he's got a location. He's got a time. He knows that people are going to be there. He can be there with an RFID scanner, rip a badge, and now he's got access to the building, and he's got human resources access to the building, so he can technically get in to access hard copy or access servers. So I look at it from a physical standpoint more so than just clicking stuff on a keyboard.
Well, and that's the thing of like most people don't go to that because like essentially everything is happening in a black box.
Right.
It's like it's very easy to think about, oh, this thing is bad when there's physically someone going to that location, making a copy of their ID. But we live in a world where that's no longer necessary.
Right.
If you can, like, getting into that, like, in theory, if you're a good enough hacker, you don't need to do that. You can bypass all their security features and hack your way in to get all. And it's especially like with what I'm doing right now at work, like we're automating a lot of our procedures, and it's sometimes scary, like how easy it is through code to access something in a different location.
Yep.
So like an example is we have one of our customers will drop files to us through FileZilla. And then
So effectively they're dropping like PI, like personal data to another server that then is pulled to your server.
I don't know if it's PII data off the top of my head. Actually, no, I'm trying to think about this. That data is not PII. Because we receive 3 different methods of receiving data from them. Plus like an entire like different server as well that we can go into access, but it's like only do that in like emergency situations type deal. So this one is not PII data, but it's like still files that not the end of the world if they get out, but also like not great either.
Yeah. No, I get that.
Like, because part of it again is like sometimes it's like, so what places will do is like you might have a table with one particular form of PII data, and they'll send that to you one way. And on the own, even though it's PII, it's only like one identifying measure. And so it's like not the biggest thing, because I think generally for it to be like considered like actually PII, I want to say it's 3 forms of identification, or like there's like a full name is not technically considered a true form of identification.
Well, and that's like what we use for a lot of stuff. Like we use a 2FA, and it's something you have and something you know. That's what we always say. Something you have and something you know.
Well, it's like I mean, I'm not going to put my full name out there, but like I have a very common name, even like my first and last name. It is very popular across the United States. If someone like sees a table with my name, they've still only narrowed it down to about 2,000 people.
Right. Yeah.
And then like I'm going to say this, like I know someone with my exact first and last name. Our only difference is our middle name. Know someone, Facebook friends with them. We were in the same sorority. So it's like that doesn't necessarily help with identifying. Now there are some people with very unique names where it automatically is like, oh, this is for sure this person.
Mowgli is pitching a hissy fit right now.
Yeah, he'll get over it.
He's like, I haven't seen you for 5 minutes. Where are you?
But I was saying is like they might send this data in one file and one method, and then there'll be another data, and again it's only like one type of thing. And it's in a different way, so now that's harder to access, and it only becomes PII like from a legal perspective when they get joined together.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
And so that would be something, so like we have stuff that we do with that where like they get joined together on our end and they're stored in a very particular location.
Okay, that makes sense.
And that does not get like sent back and forth between people. Or so like with what I was saying there, it's like now I'm trying to remember the train of thought. I was like, oh yes. But like with FileZilla, like having codes that can just go in and be like, oh, there's a new file here, let's pull that down. And all it takes if someone gets into our system, all they have to do is like essentially like copy that code.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I mean, there's some other measures that go into it, but it's like it's sometimes scary how easy it feels.
Hmm. Yeah. No, I
And
can definitely see that.
like I mean, I even remember like in college with my first like intro to like programming, and I remember like one of our homework assignments was to write a script that submitted our homework for us.
Okay.
And so like it was like in college where like you would upload, like you'd have to go to the website and like drop your file there.
Mm-hmm.
And so like this whole script would go in and like take the file from our computer and drop it to the website.
Ooh, that's uncomfortable.
It was like that was like my first introduction to this world,
Mm-hmm.
and it still makes me uncomfortable to this day sometimes to think about it. And while I get how it makes life easier and how like even like the things I'm doing right now with work, that it's like even though it makes me uncomfortable, it's still amazing to look at and be like, this makes my job so much easier. And now I'm not having to go in and automatically pull these files. I have something that does it for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like it makes my work so much easier, and I can actually like focus on the data
Right.
and focus on having the right answers. But it's also like it opens you up to the possibilities when you're aware that this is going on, because most people on average
Mm-hmm.
do not know that these technologies exist.
Oh no, and that's something that I ran into a lot in my past life, where the decision makers, effectively the people in charge, are 10, 15, 20 technological generations removed. They don't even know the capabilities of their own technology, let alone their opponent's technology.
Mm-hmm.
And they can't make clear decisions or safe decisions because they just don't know. I mean, and I really want to talk about part of this, but part of it, well, no, I don't think part. And so an example that an instructor gave me one time, well, he wasn't an instructor, he was more like a mentor. And this was from his particular line of work. And it was an example that he was given in a course was you had a friendly element that was under radio silence. They couldn't use radios. They had to communicate via runner, hand, and arm signal. There was an enemy element that had artillery. And in their area of operation, this enemy artillery battery was randomly dropping a couple artillery shells just randomly across the map. They would just pick a spot, drop a few shells. A couple hours later, do it again. They just kept on repeat, on repeat, on repeat. And eventually they got closer to the friendly elements little operation center. And then they keyed up on the mic. They turned on their radios and they were like, hey, we've got to move. They communicated that. They couldn't get out of that position by the time that artillery battery zeroed in on them and obliterated their position
Mm-hmm.
because of that EM wave detection.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just that alone is terrifying. Like I've heard stories from friends, you know, they were at a training center and the Op 4 was using Snapchat to generate 10-digit grids based off where, you know, they were training, because people were taking Snapchat pictures, left their geolocation on. They'd be like, oh, they're near such and such mountain. They'd generate an overlay, put it on a map, generate a 10-digit grid, pass that off to the artillery battery. Boom.
Yeah.
You know, just because people are out there Snapchat, hey, look what we're doing, you know. So it's like, how do you explain that to somebody who he doesn't know how to convert a PDF file? You know what I mean?
That's
I'm like, I like you guys have, I, I just,
and I'm gonna say this, and we might get some hate for this. Everyone complains in the US there needs to be like financial education needs to be taught. I think something that is more important than financial education is actually like this stuff. Even if they don't know how it's being done, learning that it exists and how to be smart with your actions.
well, and
Like
the rise of AI and what AI capabilities
yeah,
are.
and that's the hard part too, is it's constantly evolving, because the things that are happening right now and that will be taught in schools in 10, even just 10 years, like if you taught this, let's say ninth, 10th grade, 10 years, you have kids getting out of college and entering the workforce, and it's already out of date.
So I had read something that phone phishing scammers, what they were doing recently in the past, like probably 3-4 years, was they would try and get people on the phone and record their voice and record enough syllables to generate AI voice to call their bank.
Oh, so this was actually more because this was happening before we even met.
Really? Okay. So it's
It,
been happening a lot longer. I can see
yeah,
that.
it
Yeah, yeah.
was because it was a guy I was dating in college. His grandparents were talking about this
Mm-hmm.
and how, like, if someone is, they were saying, like, if someone's like calling you from an unknown number, never say yes.
Never say yes. I was told never say yes, never say your name, and never say your phone number back to them.
Yeah. So like I'm bad. So like you can tell if I'm talking to someone that like I don't know because
Mm-hmm.
they'll ask like, "Is this so and so?" And I'm always like, "This is she."
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um, and so it's scary what things can do. And I mean, I think the scariest thing for me, and I'm waiting, and it's actually interesting because, and again, they talked about this, is for the first time, technology fields are actually pushing for government to make laws and regulations
Mm-hmm.
around the technology field because there's a lot of concern. And surprisingly, I think people might get mad at me for saying this. I think Taylor Swift will be leading the forefront of this.
Oh yeah, the amount of AI generated content with her is absolutely horrifying that that capability exists. And I'm not looking, yes, it sucks that somebody has made naked pictures of her and that is slander, libel, whatever of her. I get it. That sucks. That to me, that's not a threat to defense. What I'm looking at is, oh, somebody has made pictures of the president doing something, or a politician, or a general.
We no longer know what is true or false
Right.
in our world, and we can't just. So, like, for me, when it scared me and I had the reality check, is it was YouTube Shorts, and I came across a, like, Taylor Swift song that was, like, her breakup song from Travis Kelce.
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
And I was just like, they broke up? How had I not heard about? And I mean, it was legit. Like, they took like her songwriting style. They took information about him. Like, it sounded like a legit Taylor Swift breakup song.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that I was going and Googling to fact check this, and it's just like, that's scary.
Yeah.
And most people in our society don't fact check.
No, they don't. They take everything at face value, and it's really frustrating that people have the most powerful object known to man in their pocket at any given time that has more computing power than what was used to put man on the moon, and you flat earthers can, and moon landing deniers can go away. In their pocket at all times, and they refuse to pull it out and hit a couple of buttons to fact check something they read, and it drives me insane.
Yeah.
Because everything, like I'll have a conversation with people, and I'm like, well, I heard a report about this, but I didn't see anything to corroborate it, so I don't know how believable it is. That's always the caveat that I put on things. If I see some like breaking headline, I'm just like, okay, it may or may not have happened. I can't confirm or deny that has happened because I don't have any corroborating sources of information to validate that this event has occurred.
It's really sad though. Like, so, and again, I feel like most of my news originally comes from like YouTube and YouTube Shorts.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I saw YouTube Shorts that like we were firing missiles at Yemen,
Mm-hmm.
and my initial thought was like, I don't know if I believe this.
The one that really irritates me, that drives me insane, so is they'll take recordings like, yes, we have fired missiles at Yemen, but it happened 6 months ago during another operation. They'll clip videos of that, say it happened yesterday, and we're firing missiles on Yemen right now, and it's like, yeah, but we did 6 months ago. This is old footage.
But it's like, it's sad that like the fact that like I see that and I'm having to go to like CNN, Fox, like I'm having to check all the news sources to be like, is this happening? Is this happening? Is it happening right now? Like it's just it's crazy. The thing is, the news is no longer about the news and facts, it's about the views.
Yeah.
It's essentially more, honestly, I feel like it's more the equivalent of reality TV.
Hmm.
Of there's some truth in there, but
They're trying to
there's,
sell something. That's
yeah.
what they're trying to do. And a lot of it is they're trying to sell panic. You know,
Well, and
they.
even just like they want people to watch. They need people to watch.
Yeah,
And the
they're
truth,
they're like politicians. They have no power unless people believe in them.
yeah.
You know.
Um, which is just it's sad.
Hmm.
It's sad that it's like come to this, but I'm also not surprised.
It's always funny because I studied history in college. When you read through, every generation says about the next generation the same thing that was said about them by the generation before. And it's just a slightly different flavor. And it just infinitely repeats. Like, I can't remember, was it Plato or Aristotle who complained about writing? He's like, kids these days just write everything down. They can't remember anything. You know, I just I just laugh. I laugh at my seniors in my field that complain about my peer group or the peer group after me, and I'm like, bro, like really, they got it harder than we did than I did, and they've got it way harder than you did because they can't do anything stupid because everybody's gonna see it and it's gonna exist on the internet, and once it's on the internet, it ain't ever going away. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, do we want to talk about what we had originally planned to talk about, or
I'm trying to think of where this conversation's going because this was not planned out
this was not planned at all?
whatsoever.
We're just ad libbing right now.
So, are you?
I'm probably gonna have to re-listen to parts of this because I might have to censor some sections out, just because I don't want to dox myself.
Yeah. Okay. So we would love to hear y'all's input on.
We're gonna get flamed so hard. Everybody's gonna be like, nah, you have an opinion. Nah, you know.
Oh, we'd love to hear y'all's inputs on AI. I do think it is a great tool.
It's been really helpful just in this alone, just in this endeavor. I mean, I've started with generating AI art because I can see things in my head, but I can't get them into the world. Like because I just haven't practiced drawing and I haven't practiced painting enough to really create stuff for people. But I can see it in my head, and I can tell like an AI art generator, like do this, do that, don't do this, do this. It can go through the process of explaining it, and it works out a little bit better.
So what I've loved about AI is like if I have a code that's not working, obviously like making modifications that like simplify it down.
Yep.
But the amount of times like I've just been able to like do like a copy of something similar into AI and just be like, what's wrong with this? And it's like, oh, you're missing your semicolon. Like every programmer has at some point in their life spent 2+ hours looking for a missing semicolon or a variable that they named wrong. And the fact that like and depending on what your code is, like you can just copy and paste it, or like, you know, sometimes I'm working with code where it can't just be copied and pasted in, but I could like take it, like what I'll do is I'll copy and paste it into like Word and start like making edits and stuff where it's not like it's does like the same thing, but it's not like it's like basically like I'm more focused on the function.
Okay, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. That
Like,
kind of makes sense.
so that way it's like, you know, instead of doing all this stuff, like I break it, like I basically kind of turn it into like a shell of itself, and it's like all the time, like the amount of times it's just been like, oh, you're missing this.
Yeah.
And
yeah, no, I definitely get that. You know, and AI helps me, you know, write descriptions for videos and things like that, or gives me title ideas. So I'd like to be able to utilize the technology a little bit more. I'm still just old, you know.
Mm.
I don't think about it sometimes, and I would like to become more proficient in editing videos, so that I could generate higher quality content that has, you know, more things to it. Like I did the video essay about microtransactions, and none of that was AI generated. That was all just me vomiting on a notepad and then expounding that vomit to you guys, and flashing some pictures on the screen. I'd like to become a better editor and be able to generate that content. You know, but then again, I'm just another voice on the internet drowning in millions of voices. So it's kind of like, do I want to make more content? Do I not want to make more content about that? Whereas, you know, is it just more enjoyable to just spend time playing video games with you and having a conversation with you on the podcast? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
No, I get that. But something else, and sorry, I'm gonna keep going on this topic because
Okay.
I find it interesting.
All right.
Something I wonder is like, as kind of going back to the whole security side of things and the hacking, as everything is moving to the cloud.
Don't get me started. Do not get me started.
I have a lot of questions. So, like, and this is probably outdated now, or it may not be, but where Mac computers, they like it was that they were more secure than like Windows computers.
From my understanding, they weren't more secure. Macs got viruses just as much as PCs did. From what I understand, from coders I have spoken to, or not coders,
So,
from like actual like hardware software guys.
so if you look at this from a statistics number standpoint,
Mm-hmm.
percentage wise, they got less viruses.
Right.
But when they first came out and like when they were running those numbers and getting everything from, it was the fact that I want to say like only like 2% of the world was using Macs.
Yeah.
If you're a hacker, why would you spend time trying to figure out how to hack Macs?
Right. How to attack such a small population.
Yeah, like it's not worth your time and effort.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's why they were like more secure.
Yeah. Well,
And
I think there is a lot of value. And that's been kind of my concern with this, because I've really wanted to do this. I've wanted to make YouTube videos. I've wanted to be a streamer, you know, but I think that there is a lot of security to be gained in obscuration.
mhm,
You know, obscuring oneself may be better than building a wall around yourself. You know what I
mhm,
mean? Because, you know, you can have the best firewalls in the world, but if everybody knows where to find you, eventually one of them's going to get through.
yeah. And that's where I'm kind of curious to see like it the security of the cloud is everything that people are like putting their trust into it, or like
My thing with the cloud, and this comes from my past life, one of our major considerations in planning and operations was we had to think in terms of what happens if everything disappears.
mhm,
How do we maintain continuity? Um, you know, so a lot of it, the way that I structured a lot of things was everything could run independently of everything else. It didn't need the internet. It didn't need the cloud. It communicated with it and it expedited the process of things, but it didn't need it because it could run on battery backup until we could get to another place. And then I would always this is how I would always brief the chief. I would say, you know, listen, if we get an EMP dropped on us, we've got bigger problems than, oh no, we can't do this one thing. We have significantly larger problems than generating this report.
yeah. And I guess like, and again, I do not know a lot about the cloud. With my office, we currently are not using the cloud.
Well, specify that the cloud is not in the cloud. It's just somebody else's computer.
Um, so it's just part of it. I need time to do more research on it because I want to become more knowledgeable on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a cloud is I feel like the cloud is just a misnomer. It is a server network. From my tertiary understanding of my cinder block brain, is that it is just a server network.
I mean, ultimately, yes. I guess part of like where I want to do more research is around the security of it.
Mm-hmm.
Because even my boss was talking the other day about how like if we use the cloud and stuff, like they're responsible for the security of it, which
See, the thing is that I hate that sentiment. Is like, well, they're responsible for the security of it. If something goes wrong, we're not responsible. And I'm like, yeah, but you still have a moral obligation to the security of X.
and that's like I have like I just like having a lot of questions about it. I have a lot of interest around it with my job.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of it is like, okay, like yes, they're responsible from it, but like if like the federal government comes in and audits our office
Right.
and they found these leaks, like is that gonna hold up with our office of like, well, they were supposed to take care of the security risk. It's not our fault. It's their
And
fault.
that goes back to you guys have a moral obligation to safeguard that data.
Yeah. And then the other thing I'm worried about is like what happens like they have a malfunction and they lose something with our data because like we have data that could be pulled into courts.
Right, exactly. Which I'll say it again. You guys have a moral obligation to the safeguard or to safeguard and to be good stewards of that information so that it is safeguarded.
Yeah. And that's something where it's like, again, I have not done a lot of research into that aspect of things. So for me, it's just questions that I like to throw out. I like to play devil's advocate.
Yeah, no,
as
I know.
you know.
I know.
So I like to question everything.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely would love to hear y'all's opinions about where all of our data is being used, cloud storage. So, and your thoughts on AI. But should we start moving back to video games now?
Yeah, probably. That is kind of the whole point of the channel.
Yeah.
But I do like using the podcast to talk about other things because there's only so much I can talk about gaming before I'm just like.
Well, I mean, ultimately, it all does like tie into gaming in a way of the fact that, especially like video games that have microtransactions, you're sending your credit card information. There's your name, your email address. Like they have info on you,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's just like
My fingers smell like bike chain grease. I just scratched my nose and I was like, that smells good.
But ultimately, like this is an important topic for gamers.
Mm-hmm. No, it absolutely is because you sign that end user license agreement. They could put anything in that your firstborn child belongs to them, and you just legally agreed to that statement.
And of course, you don't know you agreed to it because you didn't read it.
I am ashamed to admit I don't think I have ever fully read a user license agreement. I don't think I've ever done that.
I think the only time I've fully read one was, I want to say it was like a Sirius XM or something when I bought my first car because I was buying my first car and I read through everything in all the contracts because I was so paranoid they were trying to sneak something in.
It do be that way sometimes. So, but yeah.
Oh
my God,
baby.
Moley is pitching a fit that he cannot see his mama right now. Guarantee you Sriracha and Wasabi are like, what is he complaining about? Well, Sriracha doesn't know.
Sriracha's probably staring at him like...
She's either staring at him or taking a nap because she's deaf and can't hear him. But Wasabi's like, what are you doing?
Yeah. She's probably like, shut up so I can go to sleep.
Yeah. Well, no, he's big upset.
He might need to go OUT.
Oh, okay. You want to take a quick break, go do that, and I'll just hold the recording and clip it out?
Yeah. Well, let's go take a break real quick.
Okay, all right, we'll be right back. Fast forwarding in 3, 2, 1. And welcome to the future.
We are back. Okay. So do you want to talk a little bit about Helldivers now?
Yeah, so the Helldiver devs continue to be based in their rapid response to community complaints and game balancing. They won't remove friendly fire because they think it is funny. And that was stated by the development studio.
I
And
mean,
I love that sentiment.
I guess like, what's the point of friendly fire?
In a PvE game, like it just adds realism. You know what I mean?
Okay, I guess I could see that. I guess.
That's all it does.
Okay.
You know, it makes you think, it makes you engage. Otherwise, it's just you just run in and drop ordnance on yourself. You know what I mean?
Okay.
But yeah, they've done some rebalancing, which has been good. I think it's been positive because a meta very quickly formed, and if you weren't running those meta items, you'd get kicked from lobbies, which is dumb in a PvE game. I don't understand. But they've also added flying bugs.
I was about to ask about that. What does that mean? Because I see bugs is spelled with 2 G's, and so it's.
Is a typo.
Oh, so why are flying bugs an issue?
Because there weren't before.
They're like I'm thinking like
So
I'm thinking like a ladybug flying.
No. Think about a pterodactyl-sized bug trying to kill you.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah,
Okay.
because originally bugs were relatively easy to deal with, other than like chargers and bile titans. You know, like obviously they could swarm you and just like overrun your position with so many of them, but like, you know, if you kept them all on a level playing field, you could relatively control the problem. And then they were like, now there's flying bugs, and the battle space is 3D now.
I think we need to do a video where I watch you play Helldivers because I just feel like I don't have enough knowledge to understand exactly what you're talking about.
It's just gonna be confused screaming and explosions the entire time.
Okay.
Or me bitching to Daniel about him dropping mortars on me the entire time.
I still think it's something we need to do because I feel like I need to be able to at least have some context to somewhat talk and understand what you're talking about.
Yeah, no, definitely. We'll definitely do a video of that. We just need to do a video of tanks as well at some point.
Yeah. I know you want me to play tanks. Airplanes are cooler.
Yes.
But
come on, tanks are cool. What's Fash doing on WoW?
airplanes fly and they get you there faster.
Yes, but if they leak too much oil, you can't go anywhere. And not because it won't not because it won't run, because somebody will tell you no.
I mean, that's most things. If a tank runs out of oil, it's gonna. That's an issue.
Yeah, that's true. What was it? The SR-71 had like, it was supposed to leak fuel because of the way they had to fit the panels.
So part of it.
Oh God, I've got another aviation diatribe. Here we go. Send it, babe.
So it was designed to leak fuel because so think metal.
It expands when it heats.
It expands when it heats and it shrinks down when it's.
And they used fuel as coolant through the fuselage.
So not just that. So it goes hypersonic.
Mm-hmm.
Hypersonic is the reverse of what you think. Hypersonic, it actually gets cold. Like really cold.
Okay.
And so it went so fast and got so cold that it actually like shrunk down.
So what about the friction of the air?
It's still like it's not negligible. But like,
well, I guess they were technically close to low orbit.
Yeah.
You know. They were skimming the surface of the atmosphere.
So and it has to do. So when you reach a hypersonic, I'm going to try not to go into a full lesson. Essentially, the air does the exact opposite of what you think it will do.
Okay.
So like think about when you're. So a good example is actually the airspeed and the flow size. So like think about with a water hose.
Bernoulli's principle, yep.
Like when the smaller the hole is, with the same amount of water, the water's going to go faster.
Right, yeah.
So by doing that, and I'm using very general like wind tunnel here, is Sorry, I'm trying to keep my hand in the view. It's like backwards.
She doesn't know where her camera is.
I don't keep up with where the camera's placed. So essentially, like as it gets, so the tunnel will be like this big,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll get down to like that big. Once it reaches a point, once it reaches Mach 1,
Mm-hmm.
even if you make it smaller, it's not going to go faster than Mach 1.
Okay.
It actually has to be like a rapid expansion of the tunnel
Mm-hmm.
that causes it to like expand out. And it's like such a burst
Right.
that it actually speeds up and goes past to like, it can go to.
So is that why the insides of the SR-71 engine were shaped like?
Yes.
Okay.
But
But they had like I stayed up way too late one night watching TikTok videos about how the SR-71 engines worked, and it was like they had to have like buffer traps for the shock waves.
yes. So part of that is like to manage the shock waves.
Mm-hmm.
Part of that is to like you take it to Mach 1 and okay, it expands out. The first one maybe gets you to like Mach 2. The next one you expand down to like back to Mach 1, but now like when you expand out again, maybe that gets you to Mach 3.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a long time since I took Aero 2. So
Okay.
but I do know like you need the expansion, and again, like where it's at, like as it's going down, it's getting hotter, but with that expansion, again,
Mm-hmm.
the exact opposite. Now it's like cold. And I mean, it's like we actually in our hypersonics, that was part of our lab on the first day, was actually getting to like touch the hypersonic wind tunnel right after it ran.
Mm-hmm.
And like it was cold.
So like, what about the shuttle re-entering the atmosphere? Is that because it's descending in altitude into a denser atmosphere?
So that's a little bit different.
Okay.
I actually don't think it hits any.
I was told it hits hypersonic. As it comes from, obviously where there's barely any atmosphere, if no atmosphere, back in, it's hypersonic up to a certain point that it effectively hits its terminal velocity, and it's creating air resistance because of the angle of approach. We're gonna have to watch a YouTube video about this, and then we'll get back to you.
Okay, so
we'll link it.
Ooh. I wonder if they're talking in relative terms that it's hypersonic by the speed of it.
It could be.
Because hypersonic.
Well, and it depends on the approach too, because hypersonic is defined by airspeed, not ground speed, or the other way around.
Neither.
Okay.
Well, okay, depending on how you're looking at it.
Because everything's relative at a certain point.
So hypersonic actually depends on like air pressure.
Okay. Wait, so
because
now my brain's starting to hurt because I'm thinking, okay, well, there's no air pressure past a certain point in the atmosphere, so you can't be defined as hypersonic. Now everything's measured in the speed of light, and we can't.
Yes. So exactly. So hypersonic, and let me put this in actually probably a little bit better terms, is hypersonic is based off the speed of sound.
Okay, speed of sound, yeah.
Which is determined by like the air pressure. So like in space, there is
no sound, so you can't use that as a relative form of speed measurement.
Hypersonic in space. All you can do is relative to like the average speed of sound like in the atmosphere.
I will default to Star Trek warp as units of measurement. Did you know that warp is not warp 2 or no? I gotta call Dan the man because he's really good at explaining this because he's a really deep Trekkie. So warp does not go up in so it's not like, so warp 1 is the speed of light. Warp 2 is 2 times the speed of light.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like warp 3 is 3 times the speed of light. It's by orders of magnitude.
Oh, so it's like exponential.
Yes, so like warp 10 is like ridiculous.
Okay, so like warp 3. I'm trying. like what? Like probably I'm guessing 8 times.
Yeah, I think warp 3 is technically 8 times the speed of light, if I remember the way it was explained to me correctly.
Because I'm thinking like 2 to the power of.
Yes.
Is I know where my head is at, but interesting.
Yeah, if I used orders of magnitude correctly, it is exponential in its increase in speed. But yeah, so we keep.
Yeah, we're all over the place right now.
We can't get away from maybe.
But so
the Earth is round. We landed on the moon.
So for the plane, because at hypersonic speeds, it gets cold, the metals contract. So like if they actually
right, so the panel gap sealed.
Yeah, so the panel gap sealed. So they had to design it that like if they designed it where it didn't leak oil on the ground,
it would like crush itself at a certain point. Yeah, okay, I get what you're saying. See, I always told it was because of heat. That's what everybody said. Everybody was like, it's because of heat. It's because of heat. Because of heat. But
I mean, you could argue cold is the lack of heat, and it is the heat on. So like compared to when they're flying around, it's hot on the ground. So still technically yes, because of heat.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of it too, I guess because and there's like sweet spots for aircraft, right? Like they have to be at certain altitudes to go certain speeds.
Yes.
Because at like sea level, they're gonna struggle because of the density of the atmosphere, right?
So it has to do with. It essentially more so has to do with like flying level.
Well, yeah, that is something to think about because, like in Star Citizen, at a certain altitude and a certain speed, like in my F-8C Lightning, which I think is still the fastest ship in the game right now, if I'm like 30 kilometers, 40 kilometers off the surface of a celestial body, if I'm at 0 degrees, if I travel for 30 seconds, 0 degrees has moved away relative to the horizon.
And that's where, so like even like when you're flying, there's a sense of like gravity pulling you back down. That's something to take into consideration.
They haven't quite made it that far in the flight model yet. They're working on it. If you turn the engines off, gravity works really well. If the engines are on, gravity gets a little weird. It doesn't quite like to work with you.
But there's a thing that like essentially to fly higher, you have to fly faster.
Yeah.
And part of that also has to do with air density of like as you move up in atmosphere, there's less air particles.
Yeah, like a what is it? Turbofan jet engines become less efficient, so they need to switch to ramjet. That's where the new generation engines are. They've been developing.
Yeah, that's kind of. I'm not a big engine person, so it's.
Yeah, I find it very intriguing, mostly because like the shape and design of like afterburner, like the exhaust, I find to be interesting how it's forming. So yeah, it's definitely really cool. It's a really cool topic, and I'm too dumb to understand all of it, but I find it interesting to be talked at about it.
Yeah. A lot of my professors did work or were doing research on ramjets.
It wasn't your thing.
It wasn't my thing.
Right.
I was more so interested in like the outer like body design and the fluid dynamics of the like outer.
Right. How to how to make it cut through the air more efficiently. Yeah. Just like the Russian Su-57 is held together with wood screws. That's my favorite meme ever. I love shitting on Sukhoi planes. I love the story about when they finally captured a Fox bat. The whole reason that the F-14 was developed, one of the most dominant, fighters ever created, and they finally get one, and they look at it, and the engineers are like, "This thing's a piece of shit." They're like, "Why did we go so far with the F-14? We thought this thing was the best plane ever built." Have you ever read that story? So I think some guy from the Soviet Union defected with a Fox bat. I think it was a Fox bat. It was the plane that the U.S. had heard about that drove us to develop the F-14 and the F-15 later on. I'm pretty sure it was the F-14 to develop it. So that's why the F-14 was like such a big deal. Is like this thing was meant to fight this Soviet fighter aircraft, and like multi-role fighter. And then so F-14 comes out, it goes into service, and then finally one of these guys, pilots from the Soviet Union, defects with one, hands it over to the U.S. CIA, gets a hold of it, and their engineers start tearing it apart. And they're like, "This thing sucks." they're like, "This thing's a pile of junk. Why are we so afraid of this thing?" So I love hearing stories about that. Like, and then what was it? The SR-71 ground speed check with LA ATC. You know the one I'm talking about?
Sorry, I'm getting a little bit distracted because it sounds like our cats are trying to kill each other. So can you repeat that?
So the ground speed check story, I don't know if he was on a podcast or he was on a radio station or something. He was a former SR-71 pilot, and his co-pilot.
Oh, I know exactly.
You know the
yes,
one I'm talking about.
Yes.
So like the Cessna calls in, and then like a private jet calls in, and then I think it was like an F-16 or an F-15 calls in. It was like, LAATC gives them their tail numbers, like ground speed check please, and then they read it. They give him the readout, and him thinking he's all smug and stuff, that he's the fastest, biggest dog on the block in that area in the San Bernardino Valley, and then his SR-71 co-pilot keys up on the mic to the ATC, and he's like, reads off their tail numbers, like, ground speed reading please, and they read back to him, and they're like something like they were going like 0.99 Mach, and he radios back to him, he's like, we're a little north of Mach 1.2. He's like, that's what we're reading up here.
So actually, and correct me if I'm wrong in saying this, but didn't they actually say that like they were having an error because like wasn't it still like classified at the time that like people didn't know about the plane and what it could do?
I think this was in the 80s.
Okay.
I think the SR-71 was declassified by the 80s or 90s.
For some reason, I was thinking that story, like the plane was like still classified, and so they were like very confused about the readings.
There's the LA speed check story, and then there was another one where they did a flyby at some airport out west and shattered every piece of glass in the airport. They were doing a turn and burn or something, and they were heading back, I'm assuming, to wherever Area 51 or whatever base they were flying out of, they were heading to. Called into ATC, and they were like, it was a brand new airport that had opened up, and they were like, hey, can we do a flyby? And they were like, yeah, sure, we love having Air Force flybys. They didn't specify what they were in, and they were like punch it. It came by at like something stupid like Mach 1.5 at 200 meters off the ground and just destroyed this airport. They said they landed, like the airport called the base closest to them and reported it, and then they said they landed, and their wing commander was waiting on the ground for them and was like, I'll see you in my office.
Oh my gosh. Oh, also, sorry, my mind's going back to this. So when it comes to airplanes flying, there's like a range of speeds that they can do at different altitudes.
Right.
And it like increases. So it's
well, and there's a difference between straight line speed and turning speed, right?
Yes.
And because like, I mean, if you try and pull an 11G turn at 3/4 Mach, you're gonna rip the wings off.
But yeah, no, and it's like,
not that that's a problem for the F-14. I'm an F-14 stan. Had its wing ripped off and still flew back to base and landed.
So, and really it's kind of, so part of where it does is like,
he is so mad right now. He's like, you're not cuddling me.
So planes can technically go anywhere. So like, let's say a plane, minimum speed they need to like stay off the ground.
Yeah, like so what, stall speed or whatever, they have to stay above the stall speed.
Or no.
I don't know enough about this because I'm dumb.
Not quite. There's some ways that they can stall and like still be flying.
Well, yeah, I mean, like you told me, military aircraft are generally shaped like wings, so they can be blown apart and still generate lift.
Yeah. But like, let's say a plane needs to be going 100 miles per hour.
Right.
To stay in the air.
Mm-hmm.
Like just kind of just above like sea level.
Yep.
So generally they could fly anywhere. And this is assuming they can go up to that speed.
Mm-hmm.
But they should be able to maintain that altitude between like 100 miles per hour. And then whatever the the type of velocity. The
Terminal velocity?
no, terminal velocity is when you're falling.
I mean, technically all planes are falling at
So it has
the
to
same
do
time.
escape velocity, which is like what
Oh.
causes you to escape the Earth's
Your delta V.
delta V is change in velocity. That's your acceleration.
So I thought delta V is like it's the get off the body equation. So like, how did Veritas explain it? However he explained it, it's like, I don't play Kerbal Space Program. I play Star Citizen. And Star Citizen, you just get in ship, go vroom.
Okay. So we'll use the International Space Station. It is currently orbiting the Earth.
From what I understand about it, it's technically always falling. It's just falling fast enough that it misses the Earth every time.
So being in an orbit, you are just falling around the Earth.
Okay.
So it's in orbit falling around the Earth.
Yep.
If we gave it if it increased its speed while like trying to stay on that path, it would exit Earth's orbit.
Okay.
So like there is a speed that something could be at, and it could be orbiting the Earth like 5 feet above sea level.
Orbiting the Earth.
Orbiting the Earth. Like I'm gonna use like 5 feet of sea level, assuming there's nothing in its way. If it was going fast enough.
Okay. Yeah.
And then anything above that speed, if it got it, it would exit the orbit and go off into space.
Right. Okay.
So anything, the plane should be able to maintain that altitude. It would take like more work and more input.
Yeah.
At different speeds. There is a speed that it's easier to maintain that altitude at.
There's
like an optimal speed. But up until that, like the plane should be able to fly there.
Okay.
Within certain limitations and engineering factors. But then like as you go up higher, that minimum speed, like instead of 100, if you go up to like, let's say you're now 200 feet above, and I'm using very relative, just easy numbers here. So do not quote my numbers on any of this, just giving an analogy. So instead of it being 100 miles, just to stay above sea level, now you're 200. So now maybe you need to go 200 miles an hour is the minimum speed you can fly at that altitude. And then that altitude is going to have a different exit velocity.
Right. So could say an SR-71 or the upcoming SR-72 Dark Star that I'm super stoked for, that definitely isn't real, could it, in theory, throw itself from Earth's gravity at a certain speed and angle?
Don't know enough of the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
In theory, if it could go fast enough.
Like, let's say, so, I mean, it's supposed to be able to, like, speculating that he is very upset. It's supposed to go Mach 10. So at Mach 10 at the right angle, if it could maintain the speed long enough before the engines flamed out, could it, in theory, leave the grip of the Earth?
I used to know the number for the Earth's exit velocity at a particular altitude. I want to say it was 100 kilometers. I knew what it was. I no longer know that number.
Okay.
Because that was like sophomore year of college.
Yeah, it's been a little bit.
Like I was like, it's been about 8 years or so.
Yeah, right. Who's counting?
Or maybe quote more like 6 or 7.
Because I know for a fact that, you know, we used a fighter to shoot down a satellite using a specific, you know, satellite killing missile.
Yeah, well, that's a missile.
That's true. It has its own fuel.
The aircraft,
that doesn't require air, as I understand it.
I don't know if there's enough air density at the right altitude. Let me do some research on that and get back to you.
Okay. You know what we need to do? We need to get you another one of those. We need to get you one of my cameras, or I'll give you my camera. And we need to put a whiteboard back here so that you can sit and start doing equations in the back and like draw pictures of things.
I'd have to pull out my textbooks to do this. I haven't done this equations in so long.
You don't have to do the equations. You can just draw like, this is what it looks like, and there's an equation here that I don't remember.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm gonna have to pull out my textbooks to probably answer that question. But now you have me curious on if it could go fast enough. I want to say no.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was thinking too, because like, don't get me wrong, Mach 10, insanely fast.
Well, and it's one of those things
But
too of, again,
could it maintain it for long enough?
Well, and again, you get into Mach 10 is relative to where you're at in the atmosphere and the weather that day. Like, it all depends on like the air pressure.
Yeah. But I mean, at a certain altitude, there is no weather.
And that's where, so there's actually questions on like where the Earth's atmosphere ends. And I think generally, like, and I would have to go look back at my college notebooks. I want to say like kind of the general consensus that everyone's agreed upon is like 100 kilometers, which is why it was like that particular number. And again, I'd have to double check my notes. But then there was also, I remember we talked about a different altitude that was also could be considered, and it was for a different reason. I don't remember what the reason was. I want to say it was higher than that. So, because eventually, like, it just gets to a point, like, air particles just kind of, it's like our atmosphere just kind of trickles out.
Yeah. Well, because in this, this is something that I struggle with in terms of, like, when I think about space, is, like, how far the moon is from us. I struggle to wrap my head around that. I struggle to conceptualize how actually far things are and how big things are.
Oh, yeah.
It's so hard for my tiny human brain to grasp those concepts.
Well, that was part of the reason for, like, and the reason I'm almost positive the 100 kilometers is the correct number is because we discussed it, and it was like, it was an easy round number to just be like, we're gonna, like, we know it's somewhere kind of sort of around here, so this is an easy number. So
it probably changes too. Because it probably like shifts and moves and rises up and down, because I mean, like you've told me, everything's a fluid if you try hard enough.
Well, I mean, in our atmosphere, gas is a fluid.
Yeah.
Our atmosphere is 100% a fluid, so it does shift and change depending on the weather and what's going on, the air density because of the weather. Like, it's really interesting to look into. I unfortunately have not been in that world for a hot minute.
Right, yeah.
But it's something really interesting, and there is a huge overlap in actually like the aerospace industry and the weather and meteorology. And a lot of people that are doing like aerospace simulations have meteorologists on hand to help out with that.
Oh yeah, no, I can definitely see. I mean, like, I don't know if this is true because I'm gonna dox myself if I talk about this. This will be an after the podcast conversation.
Okay.
Well, we're over an hour and we didn't talk about anything on the script hardly at all. We'll save that for next week and we'll talk about games.
Maybe.
Except for the Earth is in fact round and we did in fact land on the moon.
We will maybe talk about video games. I'm not making any promises anymore.
If a whiteboard is in the next episode, it is not going to be about video games.
Maybe one day when we have our actual like studio set up, we'll have a whiteboard behind the couch.
Oh, well, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us. We hope you enjoy the content because we love making it for you.
We'll see you guys next time.
All right, peace.
Baby, you give me midnight. You whip up my appetite.